welcome back here on College Basketball Review Studio. Again, I'm Matt Majinski. That's Ariel Poderman. That's Dan Siegel. And we are with you after Feast Week on to a new week of college basketball here in the non-conference. Conference play kind of starting up a little bit, guys, but we are locked and loaded from Feast Week for the most part for these power conferences to challenges between conferences. We've got the ACC-SEC Challenge on tap today and Wednesday. It's going to be a good one. Obviously, a bunch of these teams, they try to pair up the matchups and make sure that we've got some good college basketball to watch. Not really a letdown after Feast Week this year. Only a couple days, and then you're right back into the action. So, guys, we're going to get to those games. We're going to talk about game picks and everything, but we do want to talk about Feast Week a little bit before that. We've got some winners and losers, so we're going to get right into this. So, Ariel, we'll start with you. A Feast Week winner from this past week of basketball.
I will go with the bottom of the Big East, and that starts with Seton Hall, team that a lot of people expected to kind of be one of the worst teams of any Power 5, but they proved a lot of people wrong this past week. You go to Maui, you start with beating NC State, the heavy favorite to win the Maui Invitational, and pretty convincingly as well. Then you go up against USC, a top 25 team now, and should have beaten them, got a really bad call at the end of the game. I still don't know how USC got that call, but it was unfortunate. And then they go and finish 2-1 in the tournament. So really good job by them. And then Butler, the second to last team in the preseason. Mm-hmm. They're the Greenbrier champs a week before. They beat South Carolina in the first round, and then Virginia, which is another big win, unfortunately for Dan. But that's another team that's looked really solid to start the year, almost beat SMU. DePaul, we're not going to talk about them. Even though they beat Georgia Tech, that's big for their program. And finally, Xavier. They lost to Georgia by 1, a decent Georgia team who I believe is undefeated right now. And then they beat West Virginia. And this was a team that looked really bad to start the season. So really encouraging Feast Week from the Big East. And maybe we'll see a lot more parity in the conference than we thought.
Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to go for my winner. I'm going to go with teams from the state of Michigan. And specifically, I'm talking mostly about Michigan and Michigan State out of the Big Ten. Of course, Michigan winning the Players Era tournament in absolute just dominant fashion, right? 40 points over San Diego State, a San Diego State team we thought was going to be really good. 30-point win over Auburn team that otherwise has been fine. And then this one was even more impressive. They beat Gonzaga by 40 points. Gonzaga has pretty much looked phenomenal otherwise, and they already beat St. John's in overtime. They had been playing like okay up until the Feast Week, or up until the Players Era tournament, and then they get Yaxa Landenborg going, and that when all of a sudden this could be potentially a top 3 team in the country, and every single poll they have to be top 3 if not top 1. Michigan State 2-0 in the Fort Myers tip-off win over ECU, blowout win over North Carolina. A new crop of guys just taking over for the guys that they lost. A big breakout from Jeremy Fears. Cameron Ward, the freshman, has been great. I feel like when it comes to Michigan State and Marquette, in terms of Shaka Smart and Tom Izzo and portal usage, it almost reminds me, that Twitter meme of like the Office place, like the flirting versus harassment meme. That's basically been like Tom Izzo and Shaka Smart in terms of usage of the portal. But why? Because Michigan State, they have continued to be successful, and Marquette has been god-awful this year. And so Michigan State also, while mentioning teams from the state of Michigan, shout out Eastern Michigan, 8-point win against Cincinnati. The Eagles are off to a 5-3 start this year.
All right, you went with Michigan. I went with teams from my home state of Connecticut. Starting with the UConn Huskies. Not playing in a traditional Feast Week tournament this past week, but they did have Illinois, and they look great again. Look, 74-61 win over the Fighting Illini. This was in the Garden, so obviously kind of a home game for Connecticut. But look, you look at what Illinois does. If you told me Kylan Boswell is going to score 25 points and Tomislav Ivisic is going to have 10 rebounds and Illinois is going to shoot 17 for 18 at the free throw line, I'm going to tell you that the Illini probably either won or maybe it was a very close loss. So in a 13-point win for UConn, when those things happened, I mean, look, they just did everything right. Alex Karaban was just checking off everything in the box score. Obviously, Terrace Reed made his return, only 2 points, but the fact that UConn can have him back and work him back in, also win a game like that, where Terrace Reed scores 2 points and is nowhere near himself. In fact, you're bringing him back in a game against a top 25 team where he's not even playing his remote rotation. So now you're bringing in a player. You're messing with the rotation a little bit. You're still finding a way to win. Just that win was very impressive for UConn. Then you got Yale in the Paradise Jam, beating Charleston, Akron, and then beating Vermont at Vermont. Yale. I mean, look, Connecticut obviously has run college basketball, but Yale runs the state of Connecticut. They're 7-1 this season. Their only loss was by 9 against a pretty solid Rhode Island team. So just props to those two teams. And then I know it really wasn't a feast week overall, but Central Connecticut State, 3-game winning streak. They've beaten Boston College. They've beat Rutgers. They scored 108 against Sacred Heart, 122 against a non-D1 in Johnson, Wales. And CCSU off to a 5-2 start. So, yeah, props to the state of Connecticut. But, yeah, that's my feast week winner. Ariel, go right back to you for your feast week loser. Who had a bad week during Thanksgiving break?
Yeah, so my winner was the bottom of the Big East. Well, my loser is going to be the top of the Big East, starting with the two players era teams in St. John's and Creighton. Both of them went 1-2 in the tournament. Not necessarily terrible, but not what we want to see out of the conference, especially St. John's, who was going in there to prove that they're one of the better teams in the country, but obviously did not prove that at all. Then you go to Providence. They went 0-2 in the Rady's Children Invitational. They lost to Florida and Wisconsin pretty convincingly. They're now 4-4 on the season. Is Kim English going to make it to New Year's? Time will tell with that. And then you have to talk about Marquette as well. They lost to Oklahoma in a non-feast week game, non-tournament game, but still a power conference matchup. They're now 4-4 on the season, and Dan mentioned the meme, but it's becoming more and more true every day that they just need a portal guy this year. They don't have a Cam Jones. They don't have a Tyler Kolek. They don't have a Iguodaro. So it's really showing. And like I said in the other one, this could mean a lot of parity in the conference. I mean, UConn looks like a whole nother tier, but after that, there doesn't look like a clear gap between the top of the Big East and the bottom. So maybe that makes things exciting. Maybe these teams use this weekend as a turning point and get things back in track, but not a great sign for the top of the Big East, especially as they're going to fight for tournament bids in March.
Yeah, and for my loser, I'm going to go with back into the ACC. I'm going to go with new coaches in the ACC. That was the storyline of the ACC. We got a crop of new coaches, and these guys are going to elevate their respective programs and bring them back and bring the conference back as a whole into relevancy. And look, one below average, one poor feast week isn't going to do that, isn't going to completely derail that, I should say. But Will Wade, I think, for NC State had the worst weeks of power conference schools. Lost to Seton Hall by like 10 points-ish. Beat Boise State, wasn't that impressive, and then lost to Texas. I think the thing about Will Wade and NC State, they look very, very flawed on the defensive end, just very easy to just drive the ball against them, kick it out, open shooter, like every time their closeouts are really bad. So NC State is struggling a little bit. We talked about Ryan Odom and Virginia last episode, so I don't have to go too much into that, but I think Virginia might be one of those computer trickers where they're just designed to beat bad teams by a lot of points, and they'll be like 26th in KenPom, but a bubble team kind of thing. Luke Locks for Florida State got smoked by Texas A&M. We'll wait and see there. And then finally, Jay Lucas for Miami had a fine week, 10-point loss to BYU and then a 13-point win over Georgetown. That's pretty much two of the expected results for Miami. So it's mostly just Wade, a little bit Odom, and a little bit Locks, but not a great week for new coaches in the ACC.
Yeah, my feast week losers are teams where their nicknames end or have to do with a color. I will start, of course, with the Syracuse Orange, an 0-3 trip over to Las Vegas. You have a chance against Houston. You kind of blow that chance, right? You can't talk about not having Donnie Freeman. You can a little bit in that game because Houston was at full strength. But you got to blame the free throw shooting. When you go 12 of 29 at the free throw line, it doesn't matter who you were missing. You blew the game at the free throw line. And then you lose games against Kansas and Iowa State. And sorry to mention to Syracuse, your best players out, so were their best players. So there's really no excuse there. You were catching these teams without Darren Peterson and without Taman Lipsey back-to-back games, and Iowa State wins that game by 31 points. So it wasn't even close. So now you've got a Syracuse team that's at 4-3. They blew all their chances. Only one of those was really competitive when you look at the score. Even Kansas, they were up on Syracuse for most of the game there. And yeah, now they got a tough game against Tennessee, which we'll get to in a little bit, but that's bad. Then you got the St. John's Red Storm. They also lost to Iowa State. They lost to Auburn. They beat Baylor. Was it a terrible trip? Could it have been worse? Yes. But they haven't helped themselves out. And I think that's what they needed in this players' era because they played 3 teams that didn't really matter, and they lost to Alabama. So for St. John's, it was about proving themselves after that Alabama loss. And they really didn't do that. They kind of just added more questions, honestly. Can this team even defend? They gave up at least 83 points in all 3, or at least 81 points, in all 3 games. 83 in that loss to Iowa State, 85 in the loss to Auburn, and they had to score 96 to beat Baylor. They don't have many more good chances in this non-conference. They've got Kentucky. That's about it. I wouldn't consider Ole Miss a good chance in the non-conference for St. John's. So they really have to win that Kentucky game. And then I'll be quick with the other 3, but I know we already mentioned it. Marquette losing that game to Oklahoma. Of course, Minnesota, the Golden, obviously Marquette, the Golden Eagles. You got Minnesota, the Golden Gophers, losing to San Francisco, Stanford, and Santa Clara back-to-back-to-back. They, at this point, their best win on this season, guys, I don't know what it is. Is it Green Bay? It's not Chicago State. It's not Alcorn State, and it's not Gardner Webb. So it literally might be Green Bay. So yeah, Nico Medved not looking good there. And then you've got the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You lose to DePaul, the Blue Demons, by the way. So they had a good week, and you lose to Drake. So yeah, if you were a team associated with a color, maybe next year don't play on Thanksgiving week.
Texas Red Raiders also lost by 35 to Purdue. So
they did. So. It was very I don't know if there was a color that had a good week this week at Thanksgiving Feast Week. Guys, those are our Feast Week winners and losers. Make sure to drop them in the comments if you have your Feast Week, winners and losers. And talking about Syracuse, let's transition into our ACC-SEC Challenge picks, guys. We're going to go rapid fire with this. We don't have a game of the week in this episode because obviously this is kind of a spur-of-the-moment episode, but we wanted to get this out here because of this challenge ahead. Tennessee and Syracuse at the JMA Wireless Dome, I should say. Ariel, Dan, me, that's the order we'll go, and we'll kick it off, Ariel.
Yeah, first question is if Donnie Freeman's playing. I don't know if you guys know or not.
He is not.
He's not? Okay, so Tennessee by 20, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's just I think Syracuse can keep this close, but they haven't shown anything that proves they could close out games. William Kyle and just the free throw shooting. I mean, you already talked about it. And Tennessee has that usual winning formula that they have. Give me Tennessee.
Yeah, Syracuse has played Tennessee each of the last couple of years, and they haven't had a good outlook. Tennessee won at 75-73. It looks like the last time they played in 2023, I believe that was. But yeah, it was not a great overall. I got to go back at the stats. I feel like I have these stats wrong. Yeah, okay, it was 96-70. I don't know where that came from, but I had the notes wrong there. But it was 96-70 the last time they played last season. The year before, it was 73-56. So, guys, twice playing Tennessee in the last couple of seasons, neutral and then on the road last year, and it hasn't been close. So the only thing giving Syracuse a fighter's chance in this one is being at home. But I do agree with you guys. Give me the Vols by double digits in this one. Let's move on to Texas A&M and Pittsburgh, a game where, look, I'd say both teams kind of need this win. They haven't really started off too good this season. Not saying that a win like this is going to get you into March Madness, but it could be the start of something.
I mean, yeah, yuck. What a gross matchup. Only reason I'll lean Texas A&M here is because they looked really good in their last game against Florida State, and I think Florida State's better than Pittsburgh. So I'll take Texas A&M. But, man, if you find yourself watching this game, then change the channel, please.
Yeah, there's plenty of other options on, but they have made 18 and then 16 and then 15 threes in their last 3 games. So maybe they're onto something with Buckyball, with a non-Buckyball-like roster. Give me the Aggies.
Look, Bucky needs to get something going. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here. I mean, they did just beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State's a solid team. That's a pretty good win. So if they could win that, I'll say that they beat Texas A&M. And maybe we need to start looking at Pittsburgh a little bit. I'm not saying they're a tournament team. They already lost to Quinnipiac. That's a bad loss. But then if you can follow that up with wins against Ohio State and Texas A&M, kind of makes up for it a little bit. By the way, Quinnipiac, should have added them to my Connecticut teams. So that was a miss out by me. Let's go to Virginia Tech at South Carolina. Maybe this is the only excuse to watch Texas A&M and Pitt, because this one might be a little bit worse.
Yeah, this one will be bad, but it's so bad that maybe it'll be close. Aldavas hasn't been as good as a lot of people thought he would after that for one game against Providence. I still want to go with them, but I'll go with the home team here, South Carolina. I think they have just enough to get past them.
Yeah, I agree that Abdallas has kind of cooled down a little bit. I also think he's going to be the best player on the court in this game. South Carolina has just been scraping by in every single game. They have not impressed me at all. Give me the Hokies.
Yeah, like unless Michi Johnson goes up for 20 points or more, I don't see how South Carolina keeps this game in the win column for them. I'm going to be honest. Like Virginia Tech's had also a challenging schedule. Like you look at who they play, and they've played Providence, Colorado State, St. Mary's, VCU. They've also got some okay games against St. Joe's and Charlotte in there. Like they've had a tough schedule, so I feel like Virginia Tech is battle tested enough to win this game on the road. Let's go to Oklahoma at Wake Forest. This is a little bit better today at 7.
Yeah, Wake Forest has been surprisingly good to start the season. I mean, they almost beat this Michigan team that just dominated the Players era. They were actually leading most of the game and then lost in overtime. Oklahoma, on the other hand, hasn't looked great. They lost to Nebraska. They barely beat that Marquette team that looks pretty bad this year. So I'll go Wake Forest in this one and give ACC a win.
Yeah, I think Wake could have a really good day against Oklahoma's defense as well. I really like this Wake offense. They finally pulled one out, the buzzer, the last week, and I think they have what it takes to win this one. Give me the Deeks.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wake Forest as well. Yeah, Oklahoma, that game against Marquette clearly doesn't show much. I mean, again, I go back to even the blowout against Gonzaga. Like, Oklahoma just hasn't looked good this season. Steve Forbes really needs to lead Wake Forest to the NCAA tournament. Like, I feel like his job almost depends on winning this game. As silly as that sounds, it's going to depend on that every game because they've been so close so many times. But give me Wake Forest at home because I think they'll sneak this one out. Let's go to a much better game, probably the game of the day. Well, there's a couple games of the day. But it's Florida at Duke, the reigning national champions, against a team that many think may win the national championship this season.
Yeah, I think there's only a handful of teams that can beat Duke in general, and I don't think Florida is one of them, even though they have good length and they have good wings who will do a good job of containing Cam Boozer a little bit, but I just think they're balanced. They're getting better every game, and I don't think Florida's been as good as advertised. I mean, they lost to TCU last week, so I'll go Duke in this one.
Yeah, so the start of what you said, I pretty much agree with, right? Like Florida, I think, is a team that can match up with Duke pretty well. They can neutralize Duke's offense, a lot of size, a lot of good interior presence to go up against Cam Boozer. Look, I think Duke is a better team here for sure. I think Florida could catch them, though. I'm actually going to take Florida to win a gutsy game on the road here. They're going to need a lot better performance on their backcourt. I think they get it, and they win. Give me Gators.
Yeah, I seriously would not be surprised if Florida won this game. I'm trying not to have ACC bias, but there's just nothing that's told me that Florida will win this game, and everything's telling me that Duke will win this game. Just how good Cameron Boozer's been playing. He really does look like the best player in the country right now. We hyped up a lot that first couple weeks of the season. Cam Boozer's been one of the few that's continued it every single time he's stepped on the floor. It's a big game every time. Not saying he's going to put 35 and 10 against Florida, but I do think that he's going to lead them to a big win, and they're looking like a serious contender to win it all this season. Let's move to another game later at 9. It's Georgia at Florida State. Ariel, who do we have winning this battle?
I think this game is going to be pretty fast. I know Georgia plays with a lot of tempo. I think Florida State's going to have to try to play up to their speed instead of other way around. And I think that's going to be troubling for them. Like I said, that game against Texas A&M really scared me because Texas A&M just hasn't looked good this year. So I'm going to go Georgia here.
Georgia as well. Yeah, I think the Bulldogs are they're just farther along as a program, like under Mike White. You know, I think Florida State is still figuring their identity out, and yeah, I'll go Georgia.
First true road game for Georgia all season. I feel like that's a common theme for a lot of these teams, but it just is crazy when you get to December and it's your first true road game. But I do think that Georgia wins it. Not that far of a drive over. Look, they look solid this season. The only loss is to Clemson by 3 points. They've beaten a Xavier team that looks a little bit more improved. They beat that Georgia Tech team. Nothing to write home about, but it's enough to tell me that they're going to beat a Florida State team that there's nothing to write home about either. So I like Georgia in this one. Let's go to Miami and Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin not coaching in this one, but you've got the Rebels and you've got the Hurricanes.
Yeah, this will be an awesome college football matchup. Maybe we'll see them in the playoffs, honestly, but in basketball, not as exciting. I mean, Miami's looked a lot better the last week or two after a slow start to the year, especially against that Florida team that we talked about we're not that high on. Ole Miss just lost to Utah, who I think is comfortably the worst team in the Big 12. So I'm going to go with Miami to win here. I just think that if they can stay out of foul trouble and keep those top 4 guys, Donaldson, Renew, Uday, and True Washington on the court, then that's their best chance of winning, and I think they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Ole Miss as well. Look, neither of these teams have been impressive. I think Malik Renew is kind of taking that next step, so I think he'll best player on the court is kind of where I lean here. Give me Ole Miss.
So you're going Miami, you mean?
No, yeah, sorry, Miami. Sorry.
Okay. I'm going Ole Miss with this one. I'm going to talk about Malik Renew as well. He's been playing great, but it just hasn't mattered for this Miami team. You look at a Hurricanes team that really just doesn't have a great win this season. I'm not going to sit here and say Ole Miss does either, but I do like what Ole Miss has done so far, keeping games competitive against different teams. Again, obviously you can't be losing to Utah, and I can sit here and say you're a good team, but they kept it competitive with Iowa. They beat Memphis. I think Ole Miss takes this one at home. Let's move on to Missouri at Notre Dame. Again, this one tonight, later at 9 on ESPNU. Dennis Gates, Micah Shrewsbury. Pretty solid, underrated battle here, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think this is Missouri's first true test of the season. They'll play Kansas on Sunday after, so pretty tough 2-game stretch, but this will be a good warm-up for them. And Kansas beat that Notre Dame team pretty easily by 10 or 11. So I'm going to go with Missouri here. I think that their guard play is going to be better, even though Marcus Burton's a great player. I think Shrewsbury is just a chucker, and I just don't enjoy guys like that, honestly. And I just think their wings just aren't good enough to compete with Missouri's wings, especially Mark Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of games with contrasting styles, and you kind of have that here. You got a team in Missouri that has a lot of size. You got a team in Notre Dame that's going to try to space it out and be a little bit more shooting and out athlete you. And I think in this case, Missouri 8-0, they haven't really beaten anybody. I think Notre Dame's style is going to win in this matchup, so I'm going to go with the home team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Notre Dame here. Missouri, they pretty much haven't played a power conference team. If you want to count Minnesota, then good for you, but they're 8-0 for no good reason. Notre Dame, meanwhile, they're coming off that trip to play, obviously, Rutgers I'm not going to count, but you have games against Kansas and Houston that you kept somewhat competitive, which is a good sign for me. And I think also when you return home, knowing that you can keep it close with those teams, to me, that tells me that Notre Dame is going to have a chance to beat Missouri. Let's move to one more game on today, North Carolina and Kentucky, a ranked battle. You obviously had the Florida Duke game earlier, but this one is also going to be a great one between two blue bloods here.
Yeah, I've been back and forth with this one. North Carolina has looked like the better team so far. I mean, Caleb Wilson's been as advertised. Their guards have looked good. And this is a good year for Hubert Davis. We know every year he rotates between being good and bad, and he's proven that this year. I think this game honestly comes down to who's at home and who has the home court, and that's Kentucky in this case. I think they'll bring the energy. I think some of those guys will step up that just haven't been able to so far this season, and they'll pick up their first real signature win of the year after struggling against Louisville and Michigan State earlier on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Kentucky as well. It's more doubling down on what I know about Mark Pope and what I've kind of predicted in the preseason. Look, they were outclassed by Louisville and Michigan State, but those are teams that are ultimately better, and I have them better than both of these teams in my rankings, right? So I could still be consistent and say, hey, they got outclassed by these two teams, but Kentucky is a better team than UNC at home, and that's what I'm going to say. And UNC has plenty of their flaws. We could talk about them on other episodes. So, yeah, I'm gonna go Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm going to lean Mark Pope here just in a battle against Hubert Davis. Mark Pope just seems like he knows how much this game is going to mean after hearing him in the press conferences. And look, a 9:30 tip time, right? You're talking about 9:30 on the road. That's tough for UNC. For Kentucky, it's different. You go through your entire warm-ups like usual. You know, you pretty much just know that you're starting the game a little bit later. But it's going to be different for North Carolina. So I wonder if that's going to have a little bit of a play. Not saying they're not going to be hyped up and not saying, whatever. But it might take them a few minutes to get into this one. And I have Kentucky winning. I know there's kind of weird reasons, and I do think Kentucky's the slightly better team here, even though they haven't looked it. But I don't know. I think those are factors that we shouldn't overlook. Let's move to Wednesday's games. Louisville and Arkansas. This one tipping off at 7:15.
This is, if you love freshman guards, this is the greatest matchup of your life because Michael Brown's been better than everyone expected. He was already one of the best freshmen in the country. Then Acuff's also been terrific. So really excited to see those two match up against each other and see who's going to come out on top. I'll go Louisville here. They've looked really good they've definitely played the part of being in that upper tier of teams so far that have kind of separated themselves. I think they're the last team in that top 6, but they're definitely one of those. Well, Arkansas has